Well, consumers can't get enough protein right now, whether it's the carnivore diet that's catching fire or more health-conscious consumers looking for wholesome options to incorporate into their meals. The craze for more protein is boosting overall demand for meat, including pork. But there is one concern, and that's this week's Farm Journal report. Meat is having a moment, and the craze for more protein is benefiting meat across the board.
I am still bullish of dairy. I'm bullish of beef. I'm bullish of pork and poultry. I think as you think forward, I see the next 2 or 3 years as being the years of protein. It's that side of the fence in agriculture that's going to do very well.
Ag Resource Company's Dan Bosse says his optimistic outlook on protein hinges on one major factor: consumers' ability to pay for it.
I'm still bullish of protein until we see the labor force start to shrink in the United States and I start to see disposable income coming down. Again, there's not a period looking backwards in history that I can find where disposable income on a personal basis has risen this quickly from 2020 to 2025.
Bosse says the tremendous increase in personal disposable income saw a launch point 5 years ago.
It's grown 33% since the COVID start of 2020, and that disposable income is now over $85,000 sitting here in 2025. Back in 2020, it was $64,300. And so a tremendous increase in disposable income. Some of that money is getting spent on protein, as you can imagine.
Cargill's 2025 protein profile found people are eating more protein than ever before. The report found 61% of consumers reported they increased their protein intake in 2024. That's up from 48% in 2019. According to Cargill, the shift in shoppers' preferences toward whole, minimally processed foods is giving protein a chance to shine.
It's really important to remember the U.S. public wants meat protein. Lots of signs, right? We are in a pro-protein environment. I don't think there's issues. I actually think there's a celebration about the taste and the eating experience and so forth for all the major proteins.
Kansas State's Glenn Tonzer authors the monthly meat demand monitor. The first half of the year, the MDM continued to show consumers growing demand for protein. But in the May report, it did see a shift.
The biggest takeaway from the MDM would be we have two conflicting patterns. One is the public really wants meat protein, but the macroeconomic environment is giving us some pause. So we continue to see strong signals people want protein. Taste is leading that decision, so that's good and very supportive. But we also see lots of uncertainty on the macroeconomic front. So trade discussions, elevated unemployment, inflation concerns, and so forth, those are not supportive of meat demand. So those are the two trends that are fighting their way out.
Tonzer says in May, the MDM found a pullback in consumers eating away from home, like in restaurants.
Restaurant foot traffic and expenditures at the restaurants is what's being hit more. So we're actually seeing a boost in retail, so grocery store demand, but part of that is a substitution away from restaurants, and that's across the board. It's not just pork or beef, chicken, it's all of them that we track. So I do think it is a headwind that is growing here in 2025.
That's also a trend Tonzer witnessed early in the pandemic. Even though consumers were eating out less, they were buying more protein to eat at home.
We're on the front end of grilling season, so there is some reasons for optimism that maybe the grilling demand will be enough to boost retail demand, but we got to watch the net of those two forces.
Tonzer says if confidence in the economy rebounds and tariff discussions ease, meat demand could also rebound.
It's that economic concern that's given us pause, and hopefully, we're talking here in June, that will get better here this summer.
Even with the pause in May, Tonzer says the push for consumers to eat even more protein is driven by three major factors.
More people are having meat as an ingredient rather than center of the plate, so it's coming across as more convenient, right? It's an input. Younger folks in particular are quite physically active, and their demand for protein in that, that broader lifestyle is elevated. And we have a GLP-1 effect. So Ozempic, Mounjaro, so forth. In the MDM, we put out a report earlier this year, maybe 15% of the U.S. public is using a GLP-1. That's a higher end, but that's what we estimate. And if you are on those products, you're actually consuming beef, pork, and chicken more frequently.
He says all of those things add up to support the growth in meat demand.
It's the income and the future status of my finances is mainly the only headwind at the moment, and that's why I keep reiterating that concern.
Cattle prices continue to crush records, but according to one veteran cattle analyst, it's not historically tight cattle numbers pushing those prices higher.
This price increase that we're experiencing in the industry is demand driven. Our per capita supplies were flat last year. They're going to be flat again this year. And yet we've had a market that's gone from $1.75 to $2.25. That's all been demand driven with what we've seen throughout the industry.
Cattle Facts' Randy Block says the demand piece is historically high.
Beef demand's at a 37-year high. And I think when people think about demand, obviously quality has been the key to that. We've seen the quality of the animals being produced has increased substantially.
As record high cattle prices also push the cost of beef higher, that would typically push consumers to eat more pork and chicken in the past. But it's a trend that Tonzer is not largely seeing this time around.
We see some of that, but not nearly as much as you might think. So there's less of that adjustment than historically we would have seen. 100% Glenn opinion is I think habits are a little stickier. Persistence of an item in your meal is a little stickier than in the past. Meat is an ingredient, not just a center of the plate. So there's other ways to alter the ration, like you're putting on the plate. Higher beef prices have not elevated pork demand as much as people might have expected. Higher beef prices have not elevated chicken demand as much as people might have expected. And I think it's because the consumer substitution effects, they exist, but they're not as strong as they were 20 years ago.
As consumers crave more protein, it's a bright spot for all of livestock, with many hopeful this isn't just a trend, but a permanent fixture on consumers' plates.
Meat protein, not just pork, but meat is having a moment. I'm an economist, so I have concerns on the macroeconomic front, but it is exciting to be in an era where the public's desire for meat protein is growing.
By the way, did you know pork and beef offer nearly identical amounts of protein? A 3-ounce serving of both typically contains around 23 to 24 grams of protein. All right, when we come back, there's a deadline now on some trade deals from the Trump administration. A glimpse of Ag Around the World is next.